people have died of COVID here in Australia. And I'll bring it a little closer. My
Ooh.
my sister had this cat.
It was those little teachers and that little tidbit of here, this little tidbit of here, and a book here, and a Hi everyone, look who I have back. It's Dave Johnson.
Hello.
Hi, and I'm always thankful that you get to come to my channel and do this, and I just want to always tell you that I'm very, very thankful that you agree to do this.
Thanks for
So
having me.
today we're going to do something different. First of all, and I'll explain that to you here in a few minutes, but first of all, I want to get a catch up with Dave. What is he doing? What's going on with his channel? How has he been? How is Australia? So yeah, what's up?
Wow. I hate to say so many good things because America's in such a mess right now. I feel like, it's pretty amazing to live in a country where you never, ever argue about politics. I've literally never had a political conversation with any of my neighbors at all. Like, you don't know who they're voting for, nor does anyone care. It's just a different world. So, I think 93% of Australians are vaccinated. So, and you'll never see people arguing about the rules, right? So, they say put on a mask, people put on a mask. It's just not a thing.
Wow.
And yeah, and also less than about 4,000 people have died of COVID here in Australia. So even then, people are still complaining, like, how dare you, to the prime minister, who probably won't get reelected. He was pretty good at keeping COVID out of the country. I mean, it is a relatively small island. And keep in mind, there's 22 million people. So it's not a totally fair comparison. It's still microscopic in comparison to countries like the United States, the deaths. But he made the mistake and he didn't buy the vaccine very quickly. So there was a bit of a delay. Now, keep in mind, like people like Lena Rodriguez, I think she was full on, like 100% don't leave your house, almost that strict lockdowns for 300 days in Melbourne. Yeah. So, people just do it. It's a different culture in a sense, like, and there are negatives. But there's a different culture in that people are much more community oriented. So I saw a homeless person once in Adelaide, right? There are some Aboriginal people who choose not to live in the desert and outside the city who come there, and they kind of hang out in the park. But in terms of like really, people who are long-term out of work type, it just doesn't exist here because they will find a place for you. It does a downside, you have to sometimes work with people who are not particularly competent. It does have its, capitalism. It means really you get really good service in America, and sometimes, but in comparison, I'd say this version of capitalism, which some people might call socialism, is really working for me. I have great healthcare. I'm not even a citizen yet. And I have already, as a permanent resident, I gave up my private healthcare. It's not useful. Everything's covered.
Yeah, I would love for the United States to get on the ball with the homeless, but the homeless, they don't vote.
Yep, they don't vote.
And if they were to vote, they're not going to vote for a Republican.
Yes. So yeah, they're not going to vote. Yeah, it's like denying Native Americans, making them follow these very specific rules. We know who they're voting for, and it's not conservatives. So yeah. I mean, keep in mind also, inflation is happening here too. I saved up enough money my partner and I saved enough money to buy the house we wanted to buy 2 years ago. Now it is unaffordable.
Oh,
because how huge the inflation is. It's just it's just like everyone else.
I know we don't have the corner market on inflation. I get that. You know,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
if it was up to the Republicans, they wanted us everybody to know only here in the United States, and Biden is totally tanking it because of inflation.
Right.
I'm like, no.
Yeah, yeah. Other positives are happening too, and we got to wonder. Gas prices. America is totally self-sufficient in terms of energy. So why would the energy go? Why would the cost of energy go up? It's
Yes,
not like there's a shortage for Americans. It's because they can manipulate the price.
correct.
So that's you're filling your gas tank, because a bunch of corporate executives have decided that now that Biden is president, we're just going to jack those prices up, and make sure that he doesn't win again.
Yeah, because Biden won't give them tax cuts. So yeah. I want you to brag about your painting right behind you. You can see the Black Panther eyes.
It's so funny that my father and sister are both artists, and people come into my home and there's beautiful paintings by them, but this is the one they always want. Right. This is the one by my sister, and she just did it in college. So it wasn't even like a painting that she, was trying to sell or anything. Yeah. So I'm extremely lucky in this regard. As you can see, I got a lot of art. Virtually, well, I'd say actually some of it I got myself at auctions. Australians don't know what they got, so I'll go in and $25 on a painting, and they're just not, if it's not French, they're not interested. So, but it is very funny. Every single person's like, Dave, I will do anything for a copy of that. And I keep telling her she's got to mass produce them.
So we can see the eyes and all that, but is it like a panther sleeping, or is it a kitty curled up sleeping?
It's like a cat. And I'll bring it a little closer. My sister had this cat. That was her cat that she brought home from elementary school one day.
Oh,
right. And as you can see, it says cat. So that was her project, right? But she was extremely fond of this cat, and it wasn't the family cat; it was her cat.
Oh, how cute!
So it's very sentimental, I think, for her.
Oh, beautiful. Well, kudos to her. Can you say her first name or no?
I can say her first name. It's Shelly.
Shelly?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, well, good job, Shelly, if you ever get to watch this. All right. So I have something special going on. Normally, how we used to have everybody ask some questions, and we kind of go through them, a lot of political and sometimes spiritual. But I decided I had previously, like last week or the week before, something along that lines, I had did some interviews with other spiritual leaders in our community, and that video turned out really well. And my first thought was, I would love to ask these questions to Dave. I think he would absolutely enjoy this, and then we get to know you just a little bit deeper and a little better, and also get everybody on a high vibration. I think these putting these videos intermittently in our political readings to get everybody high vibrating, I think that is important, really, and very, very,
very, very important. We need support.
We do. We do. And we also need to maintain our own spirituality as readers too. So it's not just for them, it's also for us to be able to nourish what we do here and keep our space as high vibrating as possible. So there's that. All right, so here we go. We have 6 questions that I'm going to ask. And of course, you tell as little or as much that you want to with these questions. And the first question is, what journey have you taken to end up in the metaphysical lifestyle?
Yeah, and you just want to know like the history of how I came to this work? Is that what you mean by that question?
Yeah.
Okay, sure. Let's see. Now, this is one of those questions that I could talk about for about 6 hours. So I'm just going to try to bring it down to 6 minutes. Let's see. When I was a kid, I always, there were just a couple unusual things that happened. So I always tell this story. I asked my parents how they met, and they told me, and I said, well, whose child would I be if you hadn't met? And they said, what are you talking about? My parents are completely agnostic at this time. And they said, well, you wouldn't exist, Dave. And I said, I'd be a little boy in India. And they're like, what? Where did you hear that? I mean, it's a suburban Los Angeles, we didn't know anything about Hinduism or India even. I mean, I couldn't even found India on the map as a child. So that was like an odd thing. And there were 2 or 3 times where, one time in particular, where my grandmother passed away. And bizarrely, we happened to be I was staying with some friends. We always go to this beach house. And the night she passed away, my friend Steve sleptwalked. And he sleptwalked and he walked to the window and said, "You cannot come in here. You can't come in here." And this is the only time I tried to interrupt his sleepwalking. And I said, "It's okay, she can come in." And I didn't know why I said that, but I said that. And then his mom came in, she settled him down because he got pretty crazy. This is the first time she's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Oh, yeah, fine." And I swear I just lied back down and I'm like, my grandmother died. I just knew it. And I never was so certain of anything in my life. Now, I thought this just passed, but many years later, my sister, Shelly, said, "Dave, do you remember what really happened? You know how you know these things?" I'm like, "What are you talking about?" She goes, "You told us she had died. You came home from that trip and you told us. We didn't tell you." And I was like, no, that's not true. And you and I were just talking about this. Sometimes it's kind of a curse to have intuition.
Yeah.
Something bad's going to happen, but you don't know what it is. This wasn't one of those situations because I knew exactly what was going on. But there were other situations where I just kind of had a feeling something would happen, and it did. So that was sort of a beginning. I had one experience in high school where I was just driving in a car with my brother, and I just had this moment where I'm like, it's all going to be okay. Everything is exactly the way that it should be. Like, there's good, there's evil, we're learning. It's all going to be fine. And it's just like a split second of a moment, and I didn't have a name for it. I didn't know what that was, but I actually started reading things about Buddhism. I was reading all those 50s, hippies, 50s writers like Jack Kerouac in high school. And then they were always talking about this experience. But in college, I minored in mystical philosophy. I actually was better at philosophy than English, but I figured English was a little bit more realistic in terms of jobs. And I was actually not as good at English, so I thought I would make it my major. If you go to SF State, you might as well take a minor, right? So it was great. I just loved these classes, and they were all mystical, and I met some really intriguing people. One day, it was the best class I had with a lady named Dr. Tandiaka. Dr. Tandiaka was this tall, really beautiful Black lady with a flat top. People got in that class with her, and her energy was so intense that 6 people went, I want to quit this class." The first day, like, "I want to withdraw." And everybody else was like, "I'm in love," like this kind of class. And so we went through this whole class, and there was this woman there who said, "I'm writing my paper on channeling." And I'm like, "What's that?" Nobody knew what channeling was. What's that? So on the last day of class, she's like, "You want to check it out?" And I'm like, "What do you mean?" She goes, "You want to come to this channeling session? I'm going right now." And she brought me, another lady, and the assistant wrestling coach. Okay, we were not like the open-minded people that would believe this stuff.
Wow.
And didn't charge us any money. We just went there, drank a lot of coffee, and all night long, my jaw was like, and it was like, "Remember that time?" I mean, this is what they were telling me. And she was actually doing this through a Ouija board, which I don't recommend, but she was able to go to one letter and get a whole sentence. And she would turn to me and she would say, "Do you remember that time you were vacationing with Steve and that woman came to the window? She had a message for you." And we just be like, everybody, all 3 of us were just like, I can't believe it. So, I mean, all night. And it was a really intriguing point in my life where nothing was working out. Like, I was just like, I'd moved in with one drug addict after the next. It was just really tough. And it's like, oh, wow. I go home. I open the cupboard to the sink, and a book falls out from the trash, top of the trash. It literally slides out of the trash and lands before me. And it was a Seth book. And I was just like, what? I was like, oh my God, this can't be happening. Like, it cannot be happening. And, my roommate, he worked at a bookstore. So, sometimes there were books around, but there was never a book on top of the trash that slid in front of me that was a Seth book. And I read that book cover to cover. And I tell you, there were messages in there, and I swear to God, they were for me. So I still didn't know it. This was 30 years ago. I still didn't know anything about channeling, and I had no idea that I would do it. So yeah, that, more things happened, but I think that a lot of people, a lot of clients who are calling me are experiencing these things right now. And at the same time, we're having this terrible, stress of political safe situation and people leaving the planet and, not talking to family members, just all this terrible stuff. At the same time, people are experiencing this opening. And I have just person after person saying, Dave, I'm 80 and I just can't believe that I could be having a spiritual revolution in my life right now. Who cares how old you are? It's real, it's happening. Yeah. I think that this kind of old world is crumbling before our very eyes. And it's very stressful to watch it because, now we're unpredictable. But this new world is opening up. It's a world of intuition. It's often much easier for women because they're much better at it. It's just a world where you can, I think, if you start to engage in it, really truly benefit and really truly live the life that you want to lead. If you can, I always tell people, find a way for your intuition to work for you, rather than get in an argument with your coworker who's a jerk and who's always messing with you. Meet up with your intuition and be like, how can we get around that guy? How can we, meet who we need to meet and get the advice, whether it's our own anger, and get around that person and beat them at their own game. Like, rather than going with the fist fighting, just say no, and then let them do the defense mechanisms. If you can really get to that and to that core sort of feeling and understand that you're more powerful than that guy or that lady, and that's why they're messing with you. If you can get to that ability to understand your intuition and have it work with you, if you can accept, I'm learning about my intuition right now, and that jerk is teaching me. Yes. If you can do that,
patience.
It's patience.
And understanding, and yes.
It's less personal. And I'm not saying don't get angry, because I think that's a big mistake. I think there are times we really need to get angry. And that doesn't mean you should, go beat people up, but identify the fact that you are angry. Yes. Right? Say, wow, I'm really angry about that story you're telling me about child abuse. It's making me really angry. And then once you identify that, it's like, okay, what can I do with it? Right now I'm talking to this person who's telling my story, and I can give empathy.
Sorry.
That's quite all right. I do believe at the same time, there is a lot of terrible stuff going on. There is also an opening for anyone who is a dreamer, anybody who wants to have a more integrated life, anybody who wants to be more part of a community and basically happy. I think there's a real window here for us to go in.
I definitely agree. I've been preaching that for quite some time, that our old world is dying. We have a new world to walk into. Keep high vibrating and keep on walking.
Right.
Just keep on walking. So we have question number 2. Do you have a mentor or a favorite teacher?
Well, Lena Rodriguez, of course, comes to mind.
She's wonderful.
I would be nobody without Lena Rodriguez. I think she's the most awesome, wonderful person in the universe. You are an inspiration to me. I really appreciate how you do your work and how you came to work with me. I was just super classy the way that you did that. I'm going to tell you, there are so many people that inspire me. I'm going to tell you also, my clients inspire me. Sometimes hear the stories of these people's lives and the things that they have gone through. And I mean, the first month I cried in every single session. I was just like, gosh, oh my God, I just get really emotional. I had to put a cap on it after a while, because when you really get to know your fellow humans and what things they've gone through and how they're experiencing life, you have incredible empathy and incredible respect for just the average person who, you might not know them, you might not know that intimate detail about it. As you know, you and I get to know them on these very intimate levels. I find that very inspiring. I'll also find that clients will tell me, this week it's Dr. Joe Dispenza. Every single client this week is like, Dr. Joe Dispenza, you got to check him out. You got to check him out. You got to check him out.
Yes.
So often, like, the stuff, it's like the universe is telling me, check that out, right? I do want to really recommend, people are inspiring, and that's great. I highly recommend not following a guru, right?
I agree with that sentiment. I think like what you're saying is, it's not like that one person, that one thing. It is a combination of, like with me was Marilyn Mace, and then I Michael Bernard Beckwith, and then who was that guy that just died of leukemia? What was his name? He was
the Vietnamese guy.
No, he was an American. He just died of leukemia. I can't think of his name, of course, because I'm here. But right. Anyways, I'll post his picture and everything here in a minute, to remind you who I'm talking about. But anyways, it was those little teachers and that little tidbit of here, this little tidbit of here, and a book here, and a even with learning about the 4 agreements, those type of things is really has impacted everything. It's like a great big huge recipe of every aspect of it without going head in on just one. Yeah, I can't put all of my eggs in that basket, because it would have depleted who I am. Yeah, absolutely.
We're all individuals, and go to all those teachers and learn what you can from them. But a really pretty good shaman that I know said to me, Dave, when you go and you see these, even the Dalai Lama, notice what they do wrong, right? So don't just notice what they do right. You'll learn as much by noticing what they do not particularly well, right? So I am particularly bad at technology. So there's something from you all to learn from. Do not feel bad if you're bad at technology. You can still work on YouTube and be a complete dunce when it comes to that. So you're an individual. Anybody watching is an individual. You all have great things to offer. You might go to a particular person and learn a great deal from them and integrate them into who you are.
Yes.
But who you are is really important. And you might have faults and things. You might have stuff you want to learn, but you never want to, in my opinion, give up your individuality.
Somebody always told me, take what you need, leave the rest.
Words to live by. Yeah.
All right. So the third question is, what was your most painful lesson?
Well, I'll tell you, and hopefully this is inspiring to people. I had a lot of really painful lessons. Some really, really, really painful lessons. And I kind of understand the problems with America, because I was totally in those problems. No healthcare, working 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. and half Saturday, barely keeping alive, in an apartment where they, it was right above a restaurant. So it made so much noise. My students, I was a teacher at the time, would complain. The one complaint they had was that Dave always looks tired. So that's America. I mean, that's half the people in the United States right now, just barely making it. So there were a lot of painful lessons there. I think, it's a good question. I think a painful lesson to me was when I moved out of my parents' home. I thought intuition was just going to lead me to a series of happy places. It would just get happier and happier and better and better. And you didn't, if couple of things lined up, they're the roommate for you. Well, I wound up, living with some pretty horrible people. And then I was desperate to get out and wound up with some more horrible people. It was just kept happening. Bad things happened a lot until really that moment I was talking to you where I went and we did that channeling. I observed that. And even after that, problems happened. So yeah, that was very challenging. And see if I could get more specific. I mean, I learned so much in Hungary, where I was in the Peace Corps. It was the most difficult job I ever had. I sometimes had classes with 45 students, and I had a 50-minute class. I had no textbooks, I had no internet. I finally got a copy machine at some point, so at least I could do something. So the lessons all had to come out of my head. I couldn't sleep at night. I had terrible insomnia. There were a lot of good things going on in the Peace Corps, some great, truly great Americans. They were really there to serve. And I really, Republican, Democrat, I admired every single one of them. But just to get myself up in the morning after 2 days of no sleep, that was a pretty tough lesson. I think it was the energy of that place. I think I lived in a lifetime there. And
so what was the lesson coming out of that? I mean, what did you get out of those toughest times of your life? What have you been able to take away?
I mean, I'm going to say in that particular time, keep going, even though it's really hard. Like, just keep going. Just do your best. You haven't had any sleep for 2 days, but you're a teacher and these students are depending on you to go to college. So you have to get up and you have to teach them. I made a lot of mistakes as a teacher. And I think the best lesson was figure out what your mistake is, write it down along with a compliment, and then that's how you're going to learn. Right. So you just have to face the fact that you don't beat yourself up over the mistake. Just face the mistake, write it down, and then you will know. So every day I had a lesson plan. I did well done, needs improvement, don't forget. So well done was like, good that you figured out you don't have to pass out all the papers. You can give them to one student and they can pass out the papers.
Right.
That is, you shouldn't give 19 different explanations for one word. Students don't need that.
Right.
And then I'd be like, don't forget, Zoli owes you homework, and so-and-so was absent for the test, and there were about 25 of those things. In Hungary, you don't have a classroom. You go from classroom to classroom. So your entire classroom is in your backpack. It's very challenging, but not so in the sense that the students all listened. I was no student with we didn't have cell phones then, but no one was not paying attention. And if I said, I'm going to get the book out, they would just be like in terror. The book would be like where I'd write it out to their parents. They just look at me like, no, I'll do anything. So, I don't know how to express that lesson in another way, except to say that after all of the hard work, an opening happened. 2 of my friends are like, hey, would you ever be interested in seeing a shaman? And I'm like, what's that? And a week later, that's when I had my revelatory moment. So
you learned that being wrong was okay.
Yeah, making a mistake is okay. That's how we learn.
Yeah, making a mistake is, and that was one of my biggest thing is making a mistake, as whatever was in my head as a woman, I have to do a bigger, better, and best above a man in order to gain anything in this country. Right. And
you always have to talk nice. You always have to be nice.
And be nice. Exactly. Be sweet. Be sweet. And so I also had that lesson where making a mistake doesn't make me like this wrong, or I'm not going to fail just because I've made a mistake. So I get that. All right. So the next one is, what was your most joyous lesson?
Wow. Now that is hard to tell you, because the lessons, there's so many incredible joyous lessons. I am truly blessed in that regard. I've gone through all the difficulties, but I've also experienced incredible revelations. And what was the most joyous one? Well, I'll just, the time where I saw the shaman was pretty joyous. That pretty much lasted 2 days of like, wow. But I'm just going to put maybe the most recent one. About a year and a half ago, maybe it was a year ago, I went to Uluru. And Uluru is this very sacred mountain in Australia. It used to be that people climb it, but now the Aboriginals have said, no, they have enough power to say, no, you're not allowed to climb it, and you're not allowed to take pictures of it, because they do not believe that you should take a picture of something. They're like, it is a space, it's a sacred place. and it shouldn't be frozen in death. Like that's how they think of it. Well, because of COVID, usually there's like 100 buses and everybody's sleeping out on the desert. Well, there was COVID, so there was only one bus. So we were the only people there. So people have told me about this place. No, it's so mystical, magical. I'm like, yeah, it looks like desert. It looks like California. And I'm from California. I'm like, all right, but my partner really want to go. So I'm like, okay, fine. Well, first of all, we're in a bus with a bunch of people, which we usually don't travel like that. So all of a sudden there's like 20 people who we became friends with because we're all talking, we're all like becoming friends. Very fun. All from different countries, different places, different spaces, like 17-year-old kid traveling on his own to like a 90-year-old guy. You know, it was really intriguing to kind of get out of our own, you know, couple space. And then we had you know, there's something about sleeping under the stars that I really like. And sleeping out under the stars in Australia is magical. First of all, it's a different set of lights. You know, there's the Southern Cross. And second of all, I don't know how this is possible, but the sky's bigger. Like, it's just something really odd about Australia. But you go here and you're like, why is the sunset so huge? And I don't know what it is about the place, but it just seems bigger. So, you know, even though you really need to go to the bathroom, right? And you're kind of, because it gets cold at night in a desert, and you're kind of cold there, you're like, well, I'll just look at the stars for 20 minutes before I get out. And it's still worth it. All these things were going on. I didn't notice a big shift. It's one of the few places where you actually interact with Aboriginal people. So they're, you know, giving demonstrations, they show people stuff. There's very little interaction unless you really seek it here. So that all happened. And I'm like, oh, that was a fun trip. Still didn't really have a revelation until the minute I got home. And the minute I got home, I was literally speaking to my partner and I said, I'm having trouble making sentences. And he's like, what? I'm like, I'm having a revelation. And this went on for days.
Wow.
And he would come in and go, Dave, do you know you just went in and turned the heating off? And I go, oh no, I didn't know that. And I'd just go like, Dave, do you know you just left the front door wide open? And I'd be like, no. I was like sending emails to people like Alba Weinman as if we were old friends. Like,
wow.
oh, great job today. She's just like, she actually responded like, would you care to elaborate? Like, who is this crazy person? And, you know, I'm sensitive to that in this business. So I'm going to say that was, you know, I've had revelations that lasted a couple hours where you're just like on that kind of cloud nine experience where you can't explain it.
Yeah.
But I never had it happen for 3 days.
Wow.
And I have to credit this place. I have to credit Uluru for that happening. I've had different versions of that where you're like, oh my God, making all these connections. You know, somebody walks up to you and tells you the answer to your question in the day. And, you know, many years ago, a tarot card reader told me many of the things that wound up happening. I didn't know how revelatory it was at the time, but he told me when I would meet my best friend. He told me, you know, stop being such a chatty Kathy. And start doing. He was pretty tough. And I was like, he's like, don't be a twit. That's not nice. Like, oh, okay. Yeah, I was really quite direct.
Like,
I was
hey.
yeah. But so yeah. I am, you know, maybe a typical Scorpio and have these very extreme experiences of, you know, in dire poverty. Right. I'm waiting for the extraordinary wealth, but
it'll come.
I'm just waiting. Yeah.
Exactly.
So,
well, you gotta get a clear perception of wealth. You see, am I wealthy like the guy who owns a mansion on the hill who pays heavenly bills, or am I wealthy because my house is paid off?
Yeah. Right.
You got to get clear about what wealth is.
Yeah. And the truth is I am pretty wealthy. I no longer have to worry over every purchase.
That's wealth.
That's fabulous wealth compared to even 100 years ago. We all live fabulous, wealthy lives. But, you know, I wouldn't want to tell anybody out there that they should just be happy with whatever they got, because it can be quite tough financially right now. People are really going through a big change culturally.
They are.
So we need these revelations to sustain us. We need to get a little bit beyond the physical if we can to sustain us. And I think it's really ideal if spirit helps you with the physical problems. It helps you with your, problems with your body. I believe that it can. And I'll tell you, the power of positive thinking. When I first moved here, I said, I'm going to change my life. I'm going to change my career. I'm going to, have a fantastic relationship. I'm going to make it in this country. And I started getting up 5 minutes early and just doing stretches and watching Abraham Hicks.
Abraham Hicks is another one of my favorites.
And it's cheesy stuff. It's all like, so, oh my God, positive thinking. I didn't just watch her, but it worked.
Yeah. I like her a lot, and I listen to her a lot. So, all right. So here is one. Can you explain to people how you receive information from spirit? So many of us have different ways and feelings and thoughts. Can you give us a how you receive spirit information?
Okay. Yeah. So first of all, I always meditate beforehand. So I always meditate. I always make sure that there's, I'm very clear. So if I would never do it if I've been like drinking the night before, unless it's like a one drink thing. And even then I don't drink very much. So even then I would, hesitate to take two. So I try to come very clear to the process. And I meditate for at least 10 minutes. I don't meditate for hours or anything. That's not necessary. If you can do 20 minutes, you're doing great.
Yeah.
And then I always burn sage, and I always burn incense. So that kind of helps me in an olfactory way. It like reminds me of the other times I was doing spiritual work. And then I just ask a question and close my eyes, and I see pictures. So as if you watch any of my videos, I'm often trying to interpret what spirit's saying. And sometimes I'm completely wrong or 6 months off or something like that. I'll tell you, I had to really learn it over time. Kavanaugh was a great example of, I knew that it would be delayed, but when it got up to the last moment, I was really wanting him not to be there. I was really hoping that Susan Collins would pull through at the last minute. And spirit kept going like this. And I'm like, oh yeah, that means no, he won't be placed in. Like, no, Dave, stop channeling. Okay, you're getting too close to it emotionally, and you're getting too close to the actual time. Things have changed. So it's a learning process. I'm not at all done. I've only just got started. I started to make my videos partly just to see if I was accurate. And be like, well, if I'm inaccurate, but I become accurate, people can watch me learn that, and they can learn that too.
So when you're sitting there and you're receiving the information, audio, visual, hearing, how do you receive it?
It's mostly visual. Yeah. And I come from a visual family, so it's not surprising, but I mostly get a visual on it. Oftentimes I get like sort of a message, and I don't know if that's like a heart thing or coming through my mind. I can't tell you which one it is, but it'll just come into my mind. I'll just be like 32, right? Or I'll just go, do you have a son and a daughter? And they'll go, yeah. It's just like, it just comes to me. And it's like, I would say the less I analyze it, the better.
Right.
If you're out there and you're learning to do this, in the beginning, go ahead and make the mistake and then find out why. But when you're initially just going with it, don't worry about your mistakes. Just come at it the way it comes. My friends used to recommend, when I was first starting tarot cards, and I'm not at all an expert, they used to say, don't read it too often, but when you do, like, write it down. And then in a week later, when things have played out a little bit, you can go, oh no, that card was really off, or this is what the cards meant.
Yeah.
I think the most important thing really is I think meditation is super important. Understand that your way may be totally different from mine. It might be that cards work for you. It might be that you're a hearer. I've had some clients who are like, oh, I'm no good at this, I just see colors.
Well,
Like,
that's exactly what I was going to say. The communication a lot of times is placed in a position to where I understand because of my life experiences. You see, I would not get a message that a man would understand because I'm not a man.
Yeah.
They have to give it to me through my own femininity so that I understand the message, I think, because of my own experience. And I too see the visual and the pictures. I see color. I didn't realize this at first, but I am a color oriented person. When I do my channeling, I see lots and lots of colors, and they mean a lot. So yeah.
So just because I'm curious, then, like, what's an example of a color that has a specific meaning in a particular situation?
Well, when I'm doing the political, orange, of course, is the orange fury. And then I see something and I would see the purple, and that would be maybe a higher meaning. Purple is also psychic, purple, and stuff like that. And sometimes I would see this one person in green, and green was either envy or radiation or, things like that. And it just kind of fits the remote as I'm doing the remote as to where I place the color. And sometimes I just literally say what I'm seeing, and maybe other people can interpret. You see, I also get the feedback from, the subscribers and the people who are watching the thing, because I realize I don't have all the answers, but I'm going to just tell you what I see. Maybe you can help me figure out what I am seeing. Just like my last remote I did about the documents that they were going to get, the January 6th. It was like the day after they released the documents to the January 6th. And I'm like, what's in the documents? And I remember going into my remote view, and one of the first things I saw was orange water. And it was turned up and it had the alphabet in it. And I just said it I just said it there, and it has the alphabet. And I'm like, I don't know what this is, but I said it. I'm like, here's what I'm seeing. And then I also saw the people handing these papers over. They were all crumpled up. And then they had to smooth them out to give these paperwork to them. So what I was seeing was Trump flushing his stuff down the toilet. And of course, I didn't see them taping things back together, but they like crumpled up and thrown away, like he would throw away the paperwork and stuff like that. So these are the things that I was seeing that they were going to get. And so that happens. Like, I don't know why I'm seeing orange water all term up with letters in it.
Yeah. Wow.
So
it is colors.
Yes.
Colors are really important for Trump, because he's the orange one. Yeah. Wow. And I'll tell you distinctly, I will get colors, but only if I'm like really focused.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I often ask people to do is create a pyramid of safety, put in love there. And I'll say, okay, what color is your pyramid? And people often have very different color pyramids. I don't know what those colors mean, but I want people to notice.
Yes.
It's like if you can see your pyramid, you can see the color, the next time it might be different. There's a story in there for you, but I have to focus on that. It's not like organic, like that I get any kind of color. And I noticed now that you mention it, women actually get colors a lot more when I'm teaching channeling. There's a lot of colors in there that men don't necessarily have. It's interesting.
Very interesting. Yeah. So it's just a very interesting avenue to go down with the colors. Now you can Google any color and see what it means on that. And sometimes while I'm channeling, I'm like, what does that color mean at this point in time? And sometimes I'll get information with that. But yeah, I get that. All right. So we're down to the last question here. And then we'll leave. You can leave us with a thought of yours that you would want to tell. And I'll describe that in a minute. So what is your idea of either your interpretation, I guess is a better question, of your higher power or your God or your spirit? What is your interpretation? If you had to sit down and explain to somebody how you interpret spirit.
Wow. First of all, I'm going to say, like, I am a human and I'm just barely getting there with even like the shadiest shadow of an understanding of this. I think it's important to be humble in that way. But I think that I believe, well, maybe I would say this. I believe all of us live many lifetimes. I think that we have come to Earth to learn. I think that we go through these lifetimes sometimes with very specific lessons, right? And we spend our lives learning it. I think also those lifetimes are very important because of how we treat each other. So, you know, when you're reviewing your life at the end, and I think we kind of go through our own personal life review, one of the important things that we say is, you know, how do we treat other people? I think that's extremely important. And I think when people come back to the earth to sort of correct their problem, they're like, hey, I treated you bad, right? Or I had a choice and I didn't really make the best choice, right? Always you're very much forgiven by the universe because we're humans and it's really hard to live on this planet. I think we do that for a while. And I think then sometimes we become guides ourselves. And we lead others on Earth or perhaps other planets in consciousness. And beyond that, I don't really know, except that I have encountered really higher powers. I mean, Ganesha, Christ, these powers are so beyond even my 1000th lifetime that I can't imagine ever being there. I'm sure we all go there in the end. But in a way, I do think that it's hard to say this because I don't want anybody to take it such that, well, hey, I chose this life, so, I'm just going to suffer, I'm being punished for the terrible things. I don't think it's like that at all.
I don't either.
I think there are some things we choose to work on. And I think there are people around us who are making bad decisions, and that makes our lives harder. And, it isn't right what they're doing. And sometimes we have to go, stop that or be peaceful warriors, however it might be. So yeah, that's as far as I can really say. It's so complex and expansive. I haven't even included Mother Earth in that, because I think the Earth is a really living, breathing thing that we're very much engaged in and has its own powers and its own needs and its own relationship with us. So, there's that aspect of the universe too, that, we have to be on the ground and also be sort of reaching for the stars at the same time. I think that's the most difficult thing for being a human, is that, we still have science, we still go to the doctor, we still pay the bills, we still all do those things. We have to have a job, at the same time, we're supposed to be moving towards this great enlightenment. It's challenging.
Yeah. I agree. I always think of it as a vision of the Avatar, where they connect their tails to this tree. That makes sense, right?
Yeah.
All right. So thank you so much for all those questions. So at the end of this is a thought. So what if you came across somebody who is so desperate for spiritual help, and you only had 30 seconds to give them a message that would change their life? What would that be?
Wow. I would say, accept your experience. You're not being punished. Accept the experience that you have in this lifetime. And if you can understand that experience and accept that it is yours, without too much judgment, it's likely that you'll be able to change that you will be able to move on if you can see your life not as a punishment, but as a sort of a learning, a place of learning. And these emotions that you're feeling are important to address, but they are emotions that are on top of all the other things. That's not a bad thing, but you do want to understand those feelings. You want to understand those emotions and where they're coming from. And meditation really worked for me. Meditation, it's important to listen to others. It's important to listen to yourself. You might be more on one side or the other, but both of those things are very, very important. I find that if you communicate with people, they usually listen.
Right. I know I've thought about this answer so many times. What would I say if I had 30 seconds? And I remember there was one time somebody had 30 seconds with me and it saved my life. And
Wow.
they said to me, Sheila, I know that you're meant to be here. And I looked up and I said, how do you know that? And they said, because you exist.
Wow.
So, all right, everyone.
Well done. That was better than mine. And I think you stayed under the 30-second mark.
There you go. So we all know that you're meant to be here because you exist. So thank you, Dave. I loved this. I really feel really good putting this out there. So I hope if anybody has made it this far, thank you so much for watching. And I will see you next time.
Blessings, guys.
We will see you next time. Bye.
Bye.